I want to talk about how we talk about power. I think the general consensus about people with power is that they're absolutely going to abuse it. They're going to do something terrible with it. And because they are in an elevated state over other people, it's the natural human inclination to step on somebody else or to force somebody else to do something. And I think this is where a disdain for power fantasy has appeared in the recent couple of decades with regards to media consumption. We look at characters who are strong and powerful and often wish fulfillment, and we think of them as inherently shallow or weak or terrible characters because they're meant to prey on that desire for power that a lot of people have. I think Amazon Prime's Fallout does a really interesting thing with this. There are two characters that we see meaningfully in the power armor in Fallout, the first one being Knight Titus and the second one being Maximus. And I think, at least within the context of this media, it undercuts the idea that having power is a gateway to abusing it, to becoming a bad person, because it is within all of us that once we get power that we are a terrible person. Let me fix my mic. Here we are. When given power, when given the armor, or at least when we meet this Brotherhood Knight, Knight Titus's first instinct is to go around killing things. It is cool. It is fantastic to go around and fire a assault rifle into the wilderness to see what you hit and pick at the entrails. Whereas Maximus, the first instinct that they have after they do a 10-mile run and enjoy themselves in the armor is try to help someone. Sure, it's misguided. Sure, they accidentally help somebody who fornicates with chickens, but the instinct of Maximus throughout the show is to help. And I feel like that's pretty shallow. Like, that's pretty shallow of a analysis for just two people in the same armor doing the same thing. But I think it coincides very well with this meme I've been seeing recently, this TikTok, wherein people are talking about if they got the power of flight, the power of laser vision, the power of super strength. There are two kinds of people. There are the people who would want to be omnimon, who would want to be Homelander, and the other member of the dichotomy is people who'd want to be Superman. And going back to power fantasy, we see that power can corrupt, yes, but more likely, power enables people to do what they want. And it shows a low opinion of humanity and society to believe that what most people want is to just bully, right? I think that a meaningful part of our population does want to help people out, are altruistic, and if not for the environment being so stifling and to have to worry about themselves, for the alternative is to perish, would go out of their way to help other people. So we look at this Omnimon versus Superman split, where some people's power fantasy is to rule, to be an emperor, to be a conqueror. And on the other side, we see people whose power fantasy is simply do good. I had a chatter talk about this in stream the other day, but someone said, I loved that the power fantasy behind Superman is, what if I could just really help a lot of people? And I think that's really sweet. Back to Fallout and Titus and Maximus, power reveals character here. And Titus is the kind of person, when left alone to their own devices, is the kind of person who gets bored, who teleports scenery, and abuse their power over their underlings to have them do stuff. When Maximus is put in the exact same position as Titus, sure, he falls into the motions because Thaddeus was a bully first. He feels some kind of retribution for making Thaddeus perform. Thaddeus is the little squire guy who is sent out after Maximus gets the armor, by the way. So we see, there's resentment, there's frustration in Maximus. They push Thaddeus to do the same chore of cleaning his codpiece that Titus brought to him. But when push comes to shove, Titus was very, very willing to throw his squire under the Yaguai, massive mutated bear, just to be mauled so he could have fun. And when that didn't happen, blamed not himself for having all the power, for having all of the ability, and missing his shot, but Maximus for not having his back, for not being subservient to him, for not respecting his authority. When Thaddeus is swallowed up by a Gulper during Maximus and Thaddeus's journey, a Gulper is like a big axolotl, by the way. When Thaddeus is swallowed by the axolotl and screams, "Don't leave me here," what's Maximus's character? What is it that Maximus does, just as a core element of their own personhood, that what do they perform here? They're noble. They perform nobility. They look at what a Brotherhood Knight is, and despite all of the circumstance which could build them into this stock jarhead, jingoistic knight that we have become familiar with in Fallouts 1, 2, New Vegas, and 4, right? Instead, we look at this person in the power armor and we don't see a soldier, we see a knight. We see somebody who goes out of their way to help people, even when it'd be convenient for them not to. I mean, one could say that it's all self-aggrandizing. In Maximus's sake, they want that recognition. Oh, doesn't that really make Maximus just self-obsessed, want to be perceived for their good deeds? And sure, I think there is a reading of that, but I also think that reading somewhat comes from a space of, like, everyone must have an ulterior motive. I like to think anyway, in Season 2 of Amazon Prime's Fallout, that when Maximus is tested, that knightly virtue of not wanting terrible things to happen again is going to resurface. Because we see how out of place they are in the finale. I'm not going to go too into detail. We see how out of place they are in that surrounding when knightly virtue comes into being an actual serf for a feudal system. And what pushes Maximus out of what would be a life of a complete leisure is to help Lucy out of a jam, right? Out of a perceived threat that Lucy is under, they drop all of the luxury that they've been missing since they were a child. Maybe they haven't even experienced since they were a child. And it's within their character to give it up for helping another person. I think if Maximus got Superman powers, they would be Superman. They would not be ding ding ding, 10 minutes.